SEC play opening up on Saturday against our 6th ranked team in 13 games. So, great opportunity. Really good opponent. Team that's, just analytically just kind of jumps off the page at you. They've won 11 straight at home. 9-0 this season at home. They average 99 points per game. I think they average like 104 at home. So obviously really can fill it up and score it. And they play 11 guys, so they really try and come at you in waves and wear you out. Lead the nation in block shots per game, fast break points per game, top 10 in the country in free throws made per game, free throws attempted per game, bench points per game, and rebounds per game. So, offensively, they're a worthy opponent. They've made 44 or more free throws than their opponents have attempted. So, do a really good job of just putting pressure on the rim. They have multiple guys that can really drive it. They do a great job of crashing the offensive glass, and just do a lot of really good things on the offensive end. We'll have our hands full there. We got to do a really good job of taking care of the ball because they do such a good job of turning offense, converting offense from their defense. So got to play with purpose, got to play under control because they're going to try and speed you up with their pressure and their press. And we just got to kind of build off what we did in the last game as far as sharing the ball with one another. And if we can do that, that'll give us an opportunity and a chance to beat a really good team, our first SEC game.
I guess what's the mindset going from non-conference to SEC play? Does it feel different for you? Does it feel different for the players? You talk about, hey, now it's SEC play, whatever that looks like. How is there sort of a mentality shift or a little bit? Is it fun? Kind of like, all right, we're here in the conference play.
Yeah, I mean, it's somebody texted the other day, said reality starts on Saturday. I was like, if SEC plays reality, what the hell is our non-conference? So while I think guys are obviously excited about playing SEC opponents because, like you said, it's a brand new season, with the schedule that we just played, like it doesn't change like your excitement because you had to be excited about playing those first 13 games, or else, instead of being 9-4, we would have been 4-9. You know what I mean? So I don't think there's a huge mindset shift because we had to get up for every single one of our opponents, in the first 13, just like we're going to have to for the next 18. So, there's some excitement there, but I think, with the schedule that we've had to play, I think we have the 8th ranked strength of schedule in college basketball right now. I think we had to be pretty locked in, to our non-conference slate in order for us to kind of survive it. And, so going into conference play, that's the benefit of playing a tough schedule is you kind of know what you're getting into moving forward. But I know the guys are obviously really excited about the opportunity to play a rival on the road in our first conference game.
Georgia's changed this year on offense. What stands out about it because they're playing a whole lot faster and obviously scoring at a really high rate compared to years past.
Yeah, he's done a good job of just kind of reinventing what they do and playing to the strengths of what they got on the roster. They got multiple guys that can make shots and multiple guys that can get downhill, and they have some role players that understand what their role is and they play it pretty well. And they just play with great effort and energy. So, they're gonna take the first shot that's a good shot for them, and then they go rebound it. So, it's similar to teams that we've had in the past where kind of wear you out, and then you also have multiple guys that can really score it, so you can't really divert all your attention to one or two guys. You got to respect everyone on the roster because they all have strengths that can be effective on the offensive end. So they're going to play with great pace, with great tempo, and we just got to do a really good job of guarding our yard because ultimately they're going to try and get downhill on us. So it's all about your one-on-one defense and our communication and being connected on that end of the floor and trying to limit them to one shot.
Murph was in here after the game talking about how he feels a lot healthier. That break was really good for him. You just mentioned everything Georgia does on the inside so well. How important is his health in this game? And I guess just kind of what's the plan of attack against a team that, like you mentioned, rebounds, block shots, shoots on the inside, all those things really well.
It's great to have Murph, bouncing around and moving, with the different the pace and the tempo that we've seen him, have over the last couple of years. So, he's gonna be important. Santos Sorrell is, you're gonna see him, and you're like, in a video game when you do create a player, that's what he looks like. You know, he looks like one of those guys, and he moves that way, he defends that way, he dunks everything that way. So, you know, he's a really important piece for what they do. So, you know, our 5 men are going to have their hands full in this game, just trying to keep him off the glass and trying to be as effective as he is. But, you know, Murph is such a skilled and talented player that, you know, he's going to be able to do some things that I think can bother those guys. And, you know, you just got to play with great activity and energy. And, you know, he's got to do a great job like he did in the Houston game of really checking out every possession, because that's what's going to be required for us to have a chance to just limit them to one shot so we can get out and, you know, get on the offensive end.
Their ability to get downhill and kind of score, you know, when you play up against a team like that, especially with their guards, is there more like you need to like be more condensed, or like is it like more like you were saying earlier, like, you know, stay one-on-one because you might not have that rim protection back there?
Yeah, I mean, we always tell our guys, like, you know, the best defenders are the ones that don't require help. So we need more guys that don't require help. So in this game, you know, the guys that are going to play are the ones that don't require as much help. So, you know, and it's going to be all 5 guys. They all got to know, because then, you know, they're so good in transition that you can't just, you know, go find your matchup. You know, you got to guard the guy in your area, or else they're going to make you pay. So all of our guys that are out there have got to be able to sit down and guard the yard and, you know, understand which way they want to go and which way they're stronger going, and, you know, try and just do a good job of, you know, jump contesting at the rim and, you know, trying to make their twos as tough as possible, because, you know, they do such a great job of just getting down there and just finishing.
Right.
I know maybe a few weeks ago you were talking about finding that extra guard. That has anybody stepped up or started to fill that role? Is it still kind of an open spot there?
Yeah, I mean, I think Caden's done a better job of just, you know, like at the end of the Purdue game when Ty got hurt, I thought he did a pretty good job running the unit. And, you know, I think he's a freshman, you know, and he's just still figuring things out with the crazy schedule that we've kind of put in front of him. So he's doing a good job. And, you know, Simon is, you know, offensively, like, you know, he does a lot of really good things and he can make shots. But, you know, I'm openly candid and honest with Simon. Like, you've got to be able to keep your man in front of you, because the speed and the quickness that you're going to see in the SEC is a lot different than what you were seeing at Huntsville High School. So, if, you know, and the part of that is just getting healthy for him, right? Because, you know, he had a knee surgery after high school. He had foot surgery not too long ago. So for him, you know, once he gets back healthy, because he does such a great job of communicating that, you know, he's going to have an opportunity, you know, once he gets healthy. And then Blake, you know, he's just got to play like he does in practice. You know, he's such a good practice player. And he like, Blake and Simon have been on the scout team the last 2 weeks. And I thought, against Purdue and Queens, I thought we played well defensively because we were a little more prepared, because we played against, I thought, 2 really good guards, you know, on the scout team. So, you know, Blake's got to just be able to translate from practice to the game, because, you know, he is a really good defender, and, you know, he's not going to hurt us on the offensive end. So, you know, just a long answer for your question. Like, it's still open. You know, we need some more step up off the bench. I thought that second unit at the very end, the last 3 minutes, like, I think we were up 37, and I told the guys, I was like, I don't want this thing to get inside of 37 at this point. Like, we got to extend this lead. And to their credit, I think they pushed it out to like 41. So did a good job of kind of finishing that game. And we're going to need our bench, you know, because obviously, like you said, like this 18 game stretch coming up is a gauntlet, and it's a lot. And we're going to require guys off the bench to step up and give some of our better players, our starters, you know, a little more time to be able to take a breather.
Y'all had some close calls in Athens. There was like last season, you lost there. How beneficial is it though that you guys have actually played in road environments? Because like, there's some teams, they're going to SEC play, they probably haven't played in a true road environment. Y'all had that one in Arizona, and basically Purdue was kind of the same way. How much is that going to help y'all on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we can draw to some of the adversity that we faced in those situations, but, you know, how did we handle it? You know, and obviously when you're in a road environment and you're playing against, you know, 2 of the top 4 teams in college basketball, you know, you're going to get tested. And, you know, we got to draw from those experiences and learn from them. So it's definitely a positive that we've been in those experiences, but the one thing that, you know, I think we could have handled certain situations better. Now, part of that is 10 new players figuring each other out, with 9 of those being underclassmen. So I think, you know, the makeup of our team being put in those situations is already a challenge. But now we got to learn from it, draw from it, and take the things that we did do well and we didn't do well in those environments, and we got to apply them, on Saturday, because Stegman's going to be just rocking, because obviously they're ranked, tied for the third best start in program history. So there's a lot of excitement around the program right now, and so it's going to take everything we got, and we just got to have a level of composure and calm about us. And I think our veterans got to do a good job in those situations of stepping up to give the rest of the group the confidence and the courage to go out there and beat a really good team.
Georgia, one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country. You mentioned earlier, how much more challenging is it on the glass when you're playing a team that goes fast, takes the first shot, and trying to attack the basket every time down the floor?
Yeah, you just can't be surprised by it. We've shown it in film where they'll play in transition and there's one pass and that ball's going up. So don't be surprised. And if they're shooting within the first 5 seconds of the shot clock, so you got to go hit a body and hold. And the good thing about our schedule is we've played against 5 of the best offensive rebounding teams in college basketball already to this point, so it's not something that we haven't already faced. So we just got to do a better job of keeping teams off the glass and ultimately finishing possessions.
With Key, obviously everybody knows he scored at a really high rate, but had a lot of assists in the last game, rebounded the ball well. How important is it when he's doing more than just scoring? And then on top of that, just how much do you feel like he's kind of developed, maybe progressed on defense? Because I know that was a big thing coming into the season 4.
Yeah, he's while we'd like to cut down some of his turnovers, he is like one of our most willing passers, as he's probably one of our best scorers as well. So that's a huge thing for him. Now he's got to cut down on his turnovers, but 5 assists in the Queens game. I want to say he had like 6 assists against Chattanooga. So he's a guy that when he does get the ball in the post, if they do decide to double, he's got that Janai Broom like hook pass to the wing, and he does a really good job with it. So that's huge, because if he was just one-dimensional, he put the ball on the floor and they'd come strip and rip him, but he's willing to pass, and he recognizes that the defense is going to take certain things away, and he's got to trust his teammates, and I think he's got confidence that his teammates are going to knock those shots down. So it's obviously a huge positive offensively. His rebounding numbers are really positive. He does such a good job of just using his body and his physicality. He's such a physical offensive player. Where he's able to, 1, draw contact to get to the foul line like we've talked about, but then 2, to get offensive rebounds. My challenge to him is, as physical as you are offensively, you got to be that physical in how you guard one-on-one defensively. So one of the things that, in the first half a couple times, he did a really good job of being physical with an arm bar on penetration and then jump contesting. But then once he got in a little bit of foul trouble, he was guarding with his chest, and they were able to get to their spots a lot easier, and that's when he gets in trouble. So for Key, my challenge to him is you're quick enough and you're fast enough to keep your man in front, but you got to physically kind of stop him at the point of attack, and then be disciplined enough to be second off the floor and then jump contest without slapping down. So he's a capable defender. His biggest thing is he's got to just stop with the silly, fouls where he slaps down and lets him go to the foul line. He's got to do a good job of playing physically, defensively, and not letting his matchup get close to the rim. Because at that point, now he's in a tough spot.
I was just going to ask, from a chemistry standpoint, how far have they come since the beginning of the season, going through the gauntlet that you did, and where they are?
From a what standpoint?
Like a chemistry standpoint, just playing together, understanding roles. How far have they come? They still got a long way to go, I'm sure.
Right.
But
yeah, I think 10 new guys, 9 underclassmen. Your only really returning player is a sophomore. Considering all those things, and then having to have played, Houston, Michigan, Oregon, St. John's, at Arizona, at Purdue, and then 3 of the other non-conference games were against teams picked to win their mid-major league. So it's we've gone through a lot of adversity together, and I think if you guys were in practice yesterday, the energy is still in a really good place, and body language is still in a really good place, and I think they've done a good job of growing through some difficult outcomes, but obviously we've had some success along the way as well. So to have 3 quad 1, quad 2 wins up to this point, I think that's more than 6 or 7 teams in the top 25 right now. So they've had some success. They've obviously had some things that we've got to get better at. But like you said, it's still a work in progress. We still got a ways to go. we haven't really gotten. We've had a couple situations where we've had like adverse situations and we've responded well to them. You know, I think obviously Bethune-Cookman, you know, was a good one. I thought St. John's at halftime was a great example. So I mean, those are some things that, you know, we did a good job of overcoming. Like NC State with 20 turnovers, like those are all things that you can draw to. But then on top of that, you know, like Ferg was asking, like in these road environments, like we haven't shown a ton of poise in a tough road environment yet. So like that's one thing that I'm really searching for with this group is like, you know, Keyshawn Hall, Tahad, KO, Murph, you know, are you guys being, three of those guys being our upperclassmen and then Todd being our one returner, like how are you guys going to respond when, you know, Georgia goes on a 5 or 10-0 run? Because they're really, they do it in such a quick spurt. They have great spurt ability, even though I don't think that's a word. We say it anyway. What are you going to do in those moments? Are you going to, you know, are you going to bring the team together and you guys going to talk through this and, you know, calm everybody down, or are we going to kind of self-implode? Like, you know, so that's what I'm kind of looking for with the group is like, who's going to step up in a tough situation, a road environment, and really continue to grow those relationships when we're in the thick of it. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. But I think, you know, as a whole, I think we're in a really good spot as far as where we're at mentally, and I think where our confidence is as far as what we're doing.